And we are now live.
Well, good morning.
Good morning. Good Monday morning. How is everyone today?
Awesome.
I'm good.
Yep. That was a smooth transition, Lisa.
Good.
Honestly. Well, good morning, everybody. It is once again Monday morning. The weeks just fly by. I don't know what you all think, but the weekend flew by and here we are Monday morning. We're ready for another week. So we are excited today because we have a very special guest, someone you guys have seen before, but someone that we enjoy bringing on periodically to give us the latest and greatest from the MLS world. So please help us welcome Jeff Smetana, the Assistant General Counsel and Director of Compliance and Data Licensing of CRMLS. So welcome, Jeff.
Good morning. Good morning. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Thanks. So, last time we had you on, we were looking for just the update on CCP and coming soon and restricted and all of that. Registered status, not restricted status, registered status. It was a year later and we were just looking for the update. And so now, we're just ready for another update from you. Seeing lots of education coming out of CRMLS. You guys are doing a wonderful job, always trying to give our members opportunities to learn more about the very robust system. And we recently had an announcement on a couple rule changes. So we just wanted to have you on so you can tell everybody what we can look forward to and how we do that.
No problem. No problem. Yeah, well, if you all got that email and read it, then good for you. That's not always the case, but we do try to get that information out there to you guys when things change a couple of times a year, unless it's a specific event that comes down to us from NAR. We do, take into account the changes that have been made at the Rules Committee and Board of Directors level. And we introduce a updated rule set and an updated citation policy. So we try here in compliance and through our education team, we try to make sure everybody gets a good heads up on that. So this email went out last week. The summary is up and, I can grab a link here in a little bit and maybe put it in the chat for you guys. The summary is up at crmls.org. The email did give you some highlights of what the more significant changes are going to be coming September 1st. And so the first one that I want to talk about is concerning IDX display rules. So that is Internet Data Exchange. That's what IDX stands for. That refers to the data feed that you as a CRMLS user are entitled to get and use to power your websites, to power the search function on your websites. That is called an IDX feed, and then what's showing on your websites is called IDX display. So as the keeper of the data and the protector of broker information that is in our system, we do have rules that govern how you can use that display and those MLS listings that are going to show up on your website. So what we've done is to take into consideration some things that have changed in the real estate world. As you know, things always change. Change is the only constant. That's what I tell my team. It drives them nuts, but it is the fact. So I'll give you a big background story, all right? And then I want you to maybe just take some time to contextualize that and you can ask me questions. But if you are aware, there have been a lot of things that have happened in the real estate world regarding consumer protection concerns, okay? If you are aware of some of the large lawsuits that have taken place throughout the country, both at the state and more importantly at the federal level, there's been some activity. And the basis of all of these claims have at their root consumer protection concerns. For example, there are some giant class action lawsuits in the Midwest at the federal level against NAR and a couple of other defendants based upon the idea that it is unfair to sellers that they have to pay the buyer's agent's compensation in the sale of their home. It's not, and we know that that's all negotiable. We could go into all the reality of it, but the claim is, hey, all these sellers, all these people who've sold their homes over the last several decades overpaid because it's an implicit issue, an implicit requirement in an MLS system based upon NAR's guidance that the seller has to pay that buyer's agent. And the sellers are left with the impression like, that's the only way I can do it, right? So that's the nature of those lawsuits, and the claim for damages is astronomical. So really the claim for damages is based upon the idea like every single one of these transactions, thousands and thousands of dollars per transaction, is damages that should be refunded to this class of claimants, which are these sellers. So big issues there based upon the fact that the seller is a consumer, okay? It's based upon an antitrust claim. An antitrust law, again, is primarily concerned with protecting consumers. So what they're saying is, hey, all these people got together, put together this system, consumers are losing out, bam, giant class action antitrust claim, okay? That's one issue. You may also know that towards the end of last year, NAR entered into a settlement with the Department of Justice. There was a lawsuit filed in federal court, and the settlement was entered the same day, which means that they had been negotiating for quite some time on how to deal with some of these things that the Department of Justice was concerned about. If you are familiar with what went on with that settlement, there were some very important points that the DOJ wanted NAR to address. One of the things was steering issues, which is the idea that perhaps buyers agents are directing their clients only to listings with a more attractive compensation offer. So for instance, I'm only going to show my clients 3% listings. We have no evidence of that, but certainly it was a concern there. There was the other idea that buyers agents should not be able to say that their services are free, okay? Because, and DOJ took issue with that. Well, it's not necessarily free if the seller's paying for it in the price that the buyer's paying, right? So you might be familiar with a lot of these arguments. The point I'm making here is there are a lot of people, plaintiffs' attorneys and government regulatory authorities that are very interested in the real estate industry and how consumers may or may not be getting all the facts and being treated completely fairly. Against this backdrop, okay, we've made a couple of changes. When the settlement was released, we at CRMLS, and these weren't even rules yet, right? The settlement just said, hey, NAR, you need to make some rule changes in the coming months that we'll look at and approve, and here's what they might be. Here's what they should cover. Before that settlement was even finalized and before the rules were ever promulgated by NAR, at CRMLS, we did a couple of things. Number one, we took away the ability to search by compensation. Okay, that's in direct connection to the steering claim, right? So if we take away that functionality that you can search as a field by compensation amount, it minimizes the idea that there's a conflict there, that agents are doing that. And we did a couple of other things. One of the other things in the settlement said, hey, you can't hide buyer's agent's compensation in your data feeds. MLS, that was directly related to us. And so now in your IDX payload, if you get a data feed, BAC is in there. It used to be confidential. It's in there. So we've abided by the spirit of the settlement. Now it's up to the brokers and agents if they want to display it. There is no mandatory rule that says you must display it. But so anyway, we've been proactive. And again, we did all these things before they even became real rules because we are reading the weather. Right? The idea that consumers need to have all this information is very important in this current climate. And so that's what we're doing. I tell you all of that because I want you to understand that as against that backdrop that we've made this most recent change to our IDX display rules. What is it? If you haven't read the summary, we now have a rule. We're altering our IDX display rule, and what it says in summary is if you have an IDX display, you're a broker or an agent using data from the MLS to show listings on your site for consumers to search, you now have to give a much clearer picture of who the listing agent is. or the listing broker. In the past, the attribution rule was basically, hey, you just have to give some attribution and try not to hide it too badly. All right, that's kind of the nutshell version. We've changed that, we've refined it on the basis of the idea that consumers should be getting all the information. Okay, again, against this big backdrop we're dealing with. So now the rule is, if you are displaying IDX listings on your broker website, you have to make the attribution prominent enough that a reasonable consumer can spot it, right? Very easily. We don't have a time limit or anything on it, but it basically, our rule of thumb is it really shouldn't take a consumer more than 5, 6, 7, 8 seconds when just they're scrolling through a listing to see, oh, I can see who the listing broker is here. That's not always been the case. If you have websites or you've seen websites, maybe you have buyers who are looking on other websites and they say, oh, I didn't have any idea who was listing this, because way down at the bottom in light gray type, 3-point font or whatever, you know, listing provided by ABC broker. That's changed. Okay, again, transparency is the key. What we're asking now, or what we're requiring, is that in your display, it has to be more prominent, much more prominent. We are sort of going to produce some content for you guys to be able to look at and figure out what we need. That's the general idea. We're adding something as well. So not only does it have to be more prominent, you do have to include contact information for the listing broker or agent. I think this is a little bit where an emotional response is occurring in people that are familiar with this. I think the initial response is going to be something like, oh my goodness, why do I even have this site if they're just going to go straight to the listing broker? Well, before you have that reaction or shortly after, let's back up and go to the consumer protection claim background again, because not only should consumers have the ability to determine who the advertising agent is and who the listing brokerage is, right? That's fair and important for transparency purposes. They should also have the contact information in case what they really want is to work with the listing broker. All right, this takes away any claims, or at least sort of inoculates us, to use a common concept, against the claim that consumers are being misled, that this is a bait and switch, a territory that's ripe for bait and switch, where you promote these listings on your website and you're promoting you, right, as a buyer's rep, no problem there, but there is a misrepresentation that's happening there that's your listing. What we are basing this on is not just this backdrop, but the reality that we get complaints, and lots of people get complaints from consumers who say, I had no idea. I thought this was this person's listing. I called them, I started working with them, I spent time on it, and I came to realize that it wasn't their listing and they're a buyer's agent who wanted to take me on as a client. And okay, that's okay, right? That's a fair business model, but that's not what I understood. And so I wasted time, and maybe I'm so burned out that I just wind up going with that person because I'm tired of looking around. And guys, that's a real claim. That's a real issue that, again, the powers that be are not excited about, right? They're looking out for these consumers. So that's kind of it, right? That's the background. And in terms of timetable, I want to sort of address some things that might be in some people's minds that, you know, this kind of thing just popped out of thin air. It didn't. Okay, I gave you the background. We're talking about things that started happening in 2018, all right, when Clear Cooperation came out. Right, that was a consumer issue, and there's a lot of things that, you know, are tapping into that. This rule change came about vis-a-vis months, if not a year, of discussion at the rules committee level, discussion at the MLS committee level, at the AORs that are our stakeholders, the feedback we got from those practitioners, the hard work of the folks, the agents and brokers on our rules committee, and ultimately the brokers and agents that are on our board of directors. It wasn't a staff created idea. Again, this is your volunteer leadership taking time to try to protect the profession from real and not just perceived, but very real issues that could be threats, could be considered threats. So that's where it came from. That's why it came about, and that's what it is. I've talked for about 10 minutes without interruption. I'm sorry
know,
for that,
but
but
Jeff-
I'm here to answer questions now. So
No,
let's
this is great because that does happen. I had that happen with one of my listings where at the end of the transaction, it was a hairy transaction the entire time. And at the end, the buyer contacted me. It was my listing. And he said, I thought I was working with the listing agent the entire time. I don't want to work with that other agent anymore. I wanted to work with the listing agent from the beginning, and I refused to have anything to do with them. And I ended up having to clean up the whole end of the transaction just because of the misrepresentation from the site that the person got the listing information from. And, it's real. That client was so frustrated, and it happens. Maybe it hasn't happened to, a lot of the agents out there, but it could, and they don't even know it.
Yes, I think you're onto something, and I think we all have anecdotal experience on this issue. I practiced for many, many years and saw it happen from time to time. And think about what that might do to you, Lisa, as the listing broker. You really didn't have any role in that, but then you had to go in and clean it up. And now you're in a contentious situation, right? What if that buyer's agent decides to say, oh, Lisa, you manipulated things, or you reached out to my client and tried to bring them to your side? I mean, these are real things that people argue about and fight about. You're buying litigation at that point. You're buying yourself an arbitration by not embracing the ideas of transparency and fairness in our advertising and in our display rules. All right. I see a chat or a question that you have there, Lisa. You want to highlight that for me so I can talk about it?
I most certainly will, because it came in from another person as well. And I'm going to leave the brokerage names out just to be safe here. Will the large websites that we all know and love out there need to clearly reflect the listing agent on their sites, and who will monitor the companies that maybe start with an R and a T and a Z and various other characters of the alphabet?
The answer to the first half of the question is absolutely 100%. Let's be honest, they're going to be under greater scrutiny because they have higher visibility. Right? There's going to be more people who can report something if they're looking at some widely viewed brokerage. Again, these are brokerages that you're talking about. They are subject to the 12.16 rule set, or the section 12.16 in our rule set, which is all the IDX displays. One of these folks who recently became a broker within the last 12 months, it's actually winding up creating a more level playing field. You may dispute that, but frankly, they have the same rights and responsibilities as every other brokerage. The question as to who will be enforcing it, I just sort of, spoke to that. Anybody who can see a listing on any brokerage website or agent website can report it. Okay, we will. That's what the compliance portion of this is. We have to enforce these rules. And we get a report that there's a display that doesn't prominently show who the listing brokerage is and or include the contact information. You send me a screenshot. There we go. I've got an enforcement action that I need to pursue. On that topic, if you don't mind, I'll segue very quickly to when is this going to happen? Well, September 1st is when the rule is changing and being published. You may be concerned, oh, my tech provider is not getting enough notice. Don't worry about it. All right. We're not going to start enforcing this probably at a minimum 60 days and a maximum 90 days. It's just like any other significant rule change. If you have any experience with CRMLS and how we implement these big changes, we take our time. We try to make sure everyone gets a fair chance to make the changes they need to make in response. And we'd like to provide enough education so that we can say, everybody should reasonably be aware of this at this point. So your tech providers will have plenty of time. Okay, we've already created an IDX contact information field, right? That's going to be something you can program if you're the listing agent or brokerage. That particular field will go out in the data feeds, and that is what your programmer will use to create the display portion. Okay, it'll be pretty straightforward. Education wise, we've already created an FAQ, a frequently asked questions on the specific issue. It's not meant to be the be all end all informationally, but it's a good start. Art Carter, our CEO, has already created a video that we'll be releasing September 1st on the issue. I will be recording within the next week or so a how-to video on how to do this, because this is important. We've created a very cool tool that's going to be included in your dashboard, where you can go in and do all sorts of new things. And I'm not going to go too far down the road, but one very easy thing you'll be able to do is go in and select your IDX contact info field, guys, because it doesn't pull from roster. Okay, it doesn't pull from roster. It's basically something that you have to opt in. You have to put it affirmatively in the information that you want to be displayed. So it's an opt-in. You need to do it. If you don't do it, your listings won't have attribution, and that's nobody's fault but yours. Okay, so again, it's fair, it's equitable, the timing is reasonable, the education efforts will be there, and we'll keep pushing it in that direction. Sound good?
Can we do that update now? Are we?
No. Just so we're clear, this new tool, this new dashboard tool won't be live until after September 1st. I'm just telling you that we've already worked this problem out, and we've got this thing built. We're just finally QAing it right now, and it should launch and fly free into the wild on the 1st, and that will coincide with kind of the how-to video that I'm going to do, and that you guys can direct each other in your membership to figure this out.
Fantastic. We got a couple more questions if you're ready.
Of course.
Okay. The next one was from Lacey. It says, I read all the info, but I'm not sure if this was answered. When we send out listings from the MLS, it will now show the listing agent's contact information as well. If so, then it wouldn't matter if a picture was taken with a for sale sign showing the listing agent info now.
Okay, so that second part is a pretty good point, but let me talk about the first point. This only applies to IDX feeds. Okay, this is only an IDX rule. If you were sending out listings straight from the MLS, customer full or whatever you want to say, this doesn't apply. This does not apply. It's only in IDX fed displays. Just to be clear, it means if you're doing some kind of promotion with an MLS based system based tool that is not your website, you don't have to worry about this. Okay, you're still going to do business as usual. On that basis, I can answer the second question, which is the branding issue. The branding issue is not going to change. We still have a problem if people are impermissibly sneaking their listing agent and listing brokerage information into listings, and thereby cheating, so to speak, and shortcutting to get their contact information to the buyer's customer or the buyer's agent's clients. That's still a real thing that we don't want to have happen. We don't want those buyer's agents having to fight, their own system and their own situation because the listing broker is improperly pushing their listing information or their contact information out. This is really just based upon a situation where you're the buyer's agent and there is a risk that you might be misrepresenting something to the public. Okay, that, these are all my listings. 75,000 listings I have, right? We know that's not true, but that's what we're getting at. You have to kind of keep going back to that. So now the branding rule is going to be still in play. You can't put your sign in your photos. Good question, though. I like the way that was angled.
Yeah, that was very, very, very good question, Lacey.
Yeah.
We got a question from Jim, just on coming soon listing, since we're talking about signs. That's why I'm bringing it up now. My understanding is that you can not have a sign on a property with a coming soon sign writer. Has this changed? Are they allowed now?
Jim, no. So with coming soon, you can market it however you want. Okay. A coming soon is not a clear cooperation issue, right? Because you're talking about questions where you're getting into the concept of, well, who can I market to? Who is the public? What is marketing? All those concerns only apply to an off MLS listing. That's what CCP addresses. A coming soon listing is in the MLS. It's in the MLS, so CCP questions not relevant. You can market your coming soon however you want, other than doing showings and open houses. Okay, think of a coming soon this way. It's just like an active listing that you can't show. You can put up a sign. You should have a sign writer. Our rule does require that if you are going to promote a coming soon, you have to include in the advertisement that it is coming soon, as far as it's reasonable, right? But no, there is no issue with putting up your sign in front of your coming soon and having a coming soon writer. I mean, that's pretty much exactly what you should do, right? So again, I understand there's still residual blurring of the lines between CCP and coming soon, and I'll keep working at it with you guys.
Okay.
Okay, boy, we got the questions are rolling in now. Lori, do you have anything that you want to ask Jeff right now before we get on to some more questions?
No, go ahead and just read those questions.
Okay. How is prominent display determined? By font size?
We are not going to drill down that far. I want you to really just think of it this way. It shouldn't take a reasonable real estate consumer more than around 5 seconds to find it. Okay. We did have the former, and it still wasn't enough, right? We had 7-point font and everything, and people just kept kind of fudging it. And so here, let me put it this way. If your developers are sitting around wondering if they've got it right, they probably don't. Right? Let's just use common sense here. We will be forwarding and promoting and pushing out some good examples. All right. We are working with some IDX developers that we have good relationships with who are going to be doing some mock-ups, and we'll be putting those out there. So we're not going to leave you in the dark, and we're not going to issue you a citation for a very long time, right? We're going to give you some time to work this through. So don't panic. It's a pretty common sense thing. Put on your hat that says, I'm not an agent right now. I'm just a real estate consumer. I was sent to this agent's website because they were referred to me by my friend, and I'm looking at their listings that they're displaying right now. Can I look at this listing and within 5 seconds determine who the advertising agent is and who the listing broker is? If I can, I'm good. Fair enough? Can we start there?
Well, and then we have a remark here. What's to stop the offenders from simply paying the fine and continuing the practice? They have deep pockets.
Well, good question. We haven't necessarily determined the fine, but I can tell you this. There are situations, well, first of all, if you're not aware of this, at the beginning of the year, we had to implement a mandatory rule from NAR for multiple citations within a year. This might interest you. If someone is eligible for a 4th citation, okay, this is a mandatory rule. If they become eligible for a 4th citation in a calendar year, here at CRMLS, we can't issue that citation. Rather, we have to send it immediately to Pro Standards at the AOR, who then takes it upon themselves to determine what's going on here. So let's say these people get away with it 3 times. That 4th time, your AOR, Pro Standards Committee, is going to be the ones who can decide what kind of sanctions are involved here. And FYI, they can carry a much bigger stick than the MLS. The fines can be up to $10,000. And one of the other sanctions that might interest you is they can be expelled from the MLS. All right. So What's going to stop them? Maybe the first time, nothing. Maybe the second time, nothing. I don't know. I hope not. But I can tell you something, on that fourth time, it's going to be your AOR and your representatives on those pro standards committee that get to step in and deal with this.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, so join pro standards. Yeah, get on the pro standards committee. Step in.
Well, speaking of pro standards, our next remark comes from Pam Pedigo.
Hi, Pam.
So we can still send out the client report when sending homes to buyers.
Yep.
Okay, perfect.
And that is not a use of IDX display.
Okay, and then we got a comment from Bob. It says, this does not make sense then. You say this is, oh, sorry, it moved. You say this is consumer protection, but listings from MLS are not impacted. Why the difference from MLS versus IDX?
I'm a little confused by the confusion. The listings that are displayed on IDX are sent from the MLS. Maybe he can clarify, because I don't understand what the question.
Oh, okay, maybe Bob will clarify that. And Pam says hello. Okay, I think that's pretty much all the questions we have so far, but there was another change that I noticed, and that was the business days. Do you want to discuss that at all? What was the thought process behind that change?
Yeah, so historically speaking, several months ago, we basically were going to define Saturday as a business rule, right? There was a lot of conversation and discussion at the rules level and the board of directors level on the idea that things were taking too long to get corrected, right? So one of the things that you rely upon in your MLS is the currency of the data. And using the business day model, you're obviously getting a weekend in there, right? So for instance, the most prominent example nowadays is clear cooperation, which by the way is not being changed. I'll just tell you that. But you have one business day to put your listing into the MLS if you market it to the public and it's not in there already. So you could do it on, Thursday, and then maybe you wind up sneaking it in on Monday and you're marketing the whole time. So I think we're all familiar with that hypothetical. But we also have issues where things are supposed to be, for instance, status updates. Okay. And I'll back up a little bit. We wound up pulling that Saturday as a business day rule back. All right. There was a lot of contention and issues, and we understood, all right, well, this is one that nobody likes. And so let's turn this around. So they went back to the drawing board and they decided to go this way. But again, it's based upon currency and accuracy of the data. So for instance, our rules require that you update your status, okay, of your listing within 2 business days. What has happened historically is, let's say a listing goes into contract on a Wednesday. Well, it doesn't wind up as being pending or active under contract until that following Monday. All right. And sometimes that's the same thing even with closed, right? So your sale might have closed and it's getting, 4 or 5 days before it actually goes into the system as closed. This was resulting in a lot of unnecessary work. Agents calling to schedule showings, clients seeing listings on IDX and syndication sites that says, well, no, it says it's still active. Why can't I see it? Buyer's agent calls the listing director. No, we went into contract yesterday, right? So there's been 3 or 4 phone calls and a bunch of conversations, a bunch of headaches for everybody, when really what should have happened is that listing broker should have gone in and made that status change right away. That's the point of the rule. So all of the changes that are time sensitive and the responses that are time sensitive, instead of being that used to say business day, will just say day. And it just means a calendar day, with the exception of clear cooperation only. All right. So that will stay 1 business day. That's how the rules and board of directors worked it out. So that's pretty much it on that one.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Okay, good.
All right. Okay, we got a clarification from Bob on his question, I think.
Okay.
Giving it my best shot here. MLS client report from buyer agent will not be showing listing agent / brokerage or phone number. That is according to letter sent by Art Carter.
Correct. Yes. So again, but that's not a situation where there's a risk of misrepresentation to the public in general. Okay, so let's think about this very carefully. So if you're a buyer's agent and you're sending listing reports from the MLS to someone you're working with, I mean, isn't that your client, right? Or isn't that someone you have a customer relationship with? They're going to be able to ask you questions. You're going to be saying, you know, hey, look, here's some listings that have come out. You're not in any way going to mislead them to think that, oh, these are my listings, right? That's just not going to happen because the relationship is different. You're working right with this person and sending them the reports. Contrast that with what an IDX display is. You don't know who's looking at that. The reason you have it is to get customers, not to communicate with your customers. That's what we're talking about. The difference here is in the form, in the explanation that Bob just clarified, you're working with your people. There's not going to be a misrepresentation happening there. On the other hand, the IDX is, hey, I've got this great dazzling website that I want people to be impressed with and see these listings and call me. It's a solicitation tool, right? It's a lead generation tool. That's a situation where that buyer, that potential buyer, that member of the public could easily be misled, right? You described it your own self, Lisa, how that happens. So really, there's a pretty big distinction. You know, I would say one is not a situation where misrepresentation and consumer protection is going to be a concern. The other one is on its face a situation where it's a concern.
Yeah, I think that's really an important distinction. You know, it's kind of like us having to put our license number on first point of contact. And the websites that are out there are generally a first point of contact situation. So you need to have that clarity as to who exactly should you even be contacting. Because yeah, that was the situation that I had. It was a lead generation site, and I got a call, but I'm sure my call came in after the person that was paying for the leads. And so I mean, I had an attempt to get them, but by then the person had already been contacted and it was not clear as to them being the listing agent or not. And to create confusion through the entire transaction, I can understand where a consumer is going to get upset. There is a certain bunch of people that want to work with the listing agents, and if people are not really representing themselves when they're getting these calls, representing themselves properly, then yeah, I think I can, having this conversation right now makes me understand why this is happening, because it is consumer protection.
Yeah, and here's the other thing. If you think about it, this just means a couple of other things that are beneficial for the buyer's agents, right? Number one, it means that they'll be on your website longer. What am I talking about? All right, so let's say under the current display rules, all it says is listing presented by ABC Brokerage. Somebody who's savvy enough looks at that and says, oh, there's the listing broker. That's the person I want to talk to. What happens now? They Google that listing brokerage, and away they go from your website, okay, to go and find that person. If, though, the contact information is there, it's just intuitively true that they don't have to leave your website. They can just click that link and go, and then your web page is still open, or they can make the phone call. So, maybe not a huge tipping point for you guys, but it's practically a reality that they won't be bouncing out of your website to go hunt for the person they really want to work with. Number two, the quality of your leads will improve. So if the person is clearly understanding who you are and who the listing brokerage is, and yet they contact you, right? Well, you've got a huge potential misunderstanding already out of the way, right? You are, logically speaking, talking to someone who is informed as to who you are. So the lead that you get is intended for you, right? Not for someone else, as you sort of just anecdotally illustrated, Lisa. So a couple of other benefits there that maybe aren't, they're hiding behind the background a little bit, but they're very real, right? Very real things. And don't forget, guys, for years and years and years, the giant portals received tons of recriminations because they weren't showing the listing broker attribution, right? The folks I'm talking about. We just got massive amounts of abuse, and everybody was just so upset because, oh, they're stealing my listings and they're selling them for leads and so on and so forth, right? Okay, well, that's been fixed, right? Let's not forget what history has shown us about that. So that's been remedied as well.
Okay.
And it's also important to understand that for when someone is advertising your listing on their website, it's not just you might lose someone off your website. You might actually gain someone because of someone else's website. So it's like, it's fair play. We all have the same opportunity because we all are going to abide by the same rule. And so for each one I might lose, I might actually pick up one or two, and vice versa. So it's something that, we can't just always think it's something being done to us. The reality is it's making a fair playing field, and we might lose, we might gain.
Yeah, great point. And I will just keep retracing my steps to the consumer protection issues. The DOJ made it very, very clear that as a buyer's rep, you can't say that your services are free anymore. All right. Does that feel bad? Probably. But that's the world we're living in, right? They don't want these people tricked or misled in any way. And if you're not familiar with what's happening, right? The Biden administration issued an executive order a couple of months ago that specifically directed the Federal Trade Commission to, quote, go after anything and everything that resembles antitrust in real estate, right? That's a very, I paraphrase it, but that's exactly what it said. So am I trying to create a boogeyman out there for you? Nope, I'm not. Should you be concerned? Yeah, because in life, sometimes risks and threats do exist, right? And you need to be prepared. And risk management is a good skill to have as a professional. And this is something that we're trying to help you guys sort of manage. So that's where we're coming from.
Well, and I think that's very wise too, because as we all know, we had the settlement, and then the settlement got reneged by the DOJ. And then they came out saying, this is what we really want to be hunting you down. Our industry, plus pretty much any industry out there, they covered all their bases on that executive order. But it's good to see that the things that CRMLS was gearing up for to be in compliance with the settlement didn't say, well, the settlement's not here, so now we don't have to do anything. You're keeping everything going so we won't have quite as huge a target on her back as we did.
Yeah, I mean, the writing's on the wall, and it'd be silly to not do things that you can do to make sure that people aren't, like you just said, targeted.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting too, because the rules are such that somebody's always going to be upset no matter what happens, because it's a leveling, like what Lori said, a leveling of the playing field. And if you're one of the people that is relying on business from the big portal sites, it's great, because now these people down here that are buying listings, at least now it's going to be leveled. So, it just really kind of depends on which side of the fence you're on the transaction. It's really, I think it's very fair myself.
Oh, that's good to hear. Yeah. And, sometimes it just requires conversations like this. It's really easy when you think you have enough information to make the decision on how to react. But, I think we all are grown up enough to know that nothing in life is rarely as simple as it seems right at the outset, right? So let's all keep that in mind as we go forward, because this won't be the last change. If anything, if we've learned anything, right, there will be more changes one way or another.
Okay. Lori, do you have anything to add right now before I get on to another question?
No, if you have more questions, go ahead. Let's make sure we get them answered.
Okay. All righty. Pam ask, I keep getting emails from agents titled listed in your neighborhood. I have to search to find the actual listing agent. One particular agent keeps advertising my listings.
That's a violation. So that's not an IDX display, right? They don't have permission to do that. Remember, your listings only appear in people's IDX feeds because that's an inherent permission that you give when you join the MLS. You can opt out, right? We have a universal switch that says, I don't want my listings to go into IDX. So it's an opt-out situation. Any other kind of advertisement that another agent does with your listing requires your express written authorization. Okay, Rule 12.8 is very clear. If you advertise the listings of another broker without permission, it's a violation. There is no warning. It is a $1,500 fine. So, Pam, you just need to send me a copy of that email, and one of my analysts will do an investigation.
Okay. So any comments from the crowd? Throw them on in. I'm loving that everybody's been really involved in this, and we've had a really good group joining us today on Facebook. So we're happy that everybody's here. Let's see, Lori, you got anything while I wait for the feed to fill?
No, I was just gonna say, Jeff, thank you for your work and CRMLS for looking ahead. You know, you said it earlier, you know, look at the weather and look at the storm that could be coming down the road. We are grateful that you guys are looking that far ahead to figure out, okay, what could be next and how do we mitigate that? You know, having the listing broker attribution is not brand new. It's already been there. It's just now it's going to look a little different. It's going to be more prominent and contain a little extra information, but it's not like this is completely out of the blue and suddenly we have to do this. But I think it's so important that you guys are anticipating what can happen, what can come up next, and really how do we protect consumers. So it does absolutely protect our industry. We do have such a target on our back in so many other ways. Each time we can, you know, put that shield up, it's really helpful. So very grateful for that.
Good to hear. Well, we'll keep trying.
Well, and you know, I'm going to share a little story that, and Lori knows the story very well, but it was one that really brought to light why it's so important that the buyer side commission offering is presented to the consumers, because it was something I could never figure out. You know, it's just like, why should they know? They're just going to beat us up more. You know, that was my initial reaction. And a friend of ours who is in the business was buying out of state. And he's not familiar with the practices and customs in that particular state. And he received a buyer broker agreement from the agent. And it had in there saying buyer to pay broker $3 for, you know, their services. And he was like, well, wait a minute. There's listings out here that are at $2 or 1.5 apples or 2.5 apples. Why am I going to be on the hook for paying $3 when, you know, if we're doing business like how we're used to, you just accept the number of apples that you're given. Or you ask about your apples being changed before you write an offer. And he was like, no, you take what you get. I'm not paying you, you know, 3 apples. And that was just like, whoa, now all of this makes sense because of the, you know, not to say people aren't using buyer broker agreements here, but the consumer had no idea what, you know, they're on the hook to pay the buyer broker a certain amount without having any idea what they're being compensated. And it was so eye-opening to me, because now it's like, now the whole thing makes sense. It didn't make sense before. Now it makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll tell you something, that the lawsuits that I mentioned at the top of our broadcast, they're not the only ones. There are other lawsuits out there from buyers for that very reason, okay, who are alleging consumer protection issues, antitrust issues, because they overpaid, right? They were never made aware of what was happening with their agents' compensation. So again, it's not a ghost, right? It's a real thing. The plaintiff's attorneys and the regulatory authorities they're looking for this stuff, and frankly, it's unfortunate. And maybe we should be a little bit more conscious of the fact that they're fighting so much. This is our profession, right? We've got to take care of it and take care of one another. And the fact that there's so much material for them to look into, and there's something there that we should probably reflect on. So you mentioned buyer broker agreements. Get used to talking about those. I expect those are going to become a lot more prevalent, right, for many, many reasons. One of them you just pointed out, it's actually a good thing, right? It's actually a full disclosure. And it also is a way to ensure that you get paid, right? In a market where maybe the seller doesn't want to pay you, right? So are you going to work and show listings without something like that in place? Might not be the most comfortable conversation to have at the outset, but it doesn't have to be an exclusive. So it's a very interesting development. You should probably get savvy on how to use those for the coming.
Yeah, it's definitely is something that I think with knowing that a client can see what you're being offered to be paid to show, to have one of these transactions go together versus what you're filling in on that buyer broker agreement. If you use the one for compensation, there are 3 of them out there, and mama bear, papa bear, baby bear versions of them. And I think we talked about the baby bear being the gateway drug to the other ones. Which it just I mean, honestly, I used it for the first time this past week, and it was just like, yeah, you know what, it went swimmingly, I felt, because it laid out what my duties were for the buyers for particular properties. So yeah, I mean, it's just going to take a little getting used to, but as long as everybody understands that the buyer can see what the compensation is, that should lead you to fill out the form however way you feel comfortable from a risk management standpoint.
Right. And, it's just a different conversation to have. It's a value proposition conversation as opposed to what the DOJ is concerned about, which is just saying, oh, I'm free. Right. No, you now kind of have to step up and say, hey, this is what I'm making. This is why I'm worth it. Right. And I think we all believe that about ourselves. So, hey, have that conversation and have it with confidence.
Exactly. Let's see what else we have. Pam wants to know where to forward the ad.
Compliance admin at CRMLS.org.
Okay. And Sherry asked, may I invite you to our office meeting, please?
Well, let's see. What kind of lunch are you serving? No, I am going to be happy to. So send an email to compliancetraining@crmls.org. I have a dedicated team of training schedulers and so on and so forth that'd be happy to set something up.
Okay. Let's see.
Virtual or in person. I mean, really, it's up to you guys, whatever your protocols are.
And depends what you're going to be able to eat, right?
Well, yeah, you can send me Uber Eats too that way.
I kind of like that. Let's see. Anything else we got in here? Let's see. Pam, I'm not going to say that because I'm not quite sure where you're leading with that. Everybody's going to have to go back and read the remarks. Okay, let's see. No, I think we're out of questions. Laura, you got anything else?
No, just really grateful, Jeff, as always, when you come out. We so appreciate it. And next time I am going to simply introduce you as Jeff Smetana, the protector of the data.
I love that you perceive it that way, because that's what we've always wanted to be considered, right? Instead of the cops, just we're going to do our job. no matter what. So, and part of my job is to come out and talk with you guys. So any other questions, thoughts, comments, concerns, you can always email us, compliance@crmls.org. Guys, don't miss our webpage either. Okay. I'm not trying to punt on communicating with you, but the idea that, we have so much on there, so much in our knowledge base. Frankly, the FAQ, the comprehensive FAQ, I won't lie to you, it's 27 pages long, but the rules are 60 pages long. But that FAQ, if the only thing you get from our website is that, you're going to know more than 95% of your colleagues, right? 95% of the questions that we get are covered in that document. So it's a shortcut. And if you really need to talk to somebody, by talk, I mean chat with someone, you can come into our chat platform and talk with any of my analysts, and they'll solve whatever problem they can for you. So yeah, don't miss those other resources if you can't get me to show up on your Zoom screen. But if you want to, by all means, reach out. We'll get it done.
There's tons of information on the website. I go there frequently when I get questions. And so I'm always looking for the answers within the system, and really looking forward to the videos that you and Art are doing for us. In the next few weeks, we'll be sure to promote it here within the group.
Sounds good. Appreciate that very much.
And if anybody out there has people that are talking about this, refer them back to this video. It's going to live on the Nerdy Real Estate Resources page, and eventually I'll get it migrated over to YouTube. But it's good information. We're very fortunate that we had Jeff here this morning to really clarify what's going on out there and why it actually is beneficial. So, tell your friends, if they're not already nerdy, they should be. So have them come hear what Jeff had to say. It's all recorded now, and it's a good resource of information. And I'm really super happy that we had you here today, because you really helped clarify a lot of information.
Happy to do it. I'd rather give you an education than a citation any day.
That's your tagline.
I was going to say that goes under the protector of the data.
Super corny, I know, but
well, let's see. We should probably get you a crown for being the king of compliance to go along with Lori's queen of compliance crown. But then you have the extra added protector of the data. So I like.
I don't need any more titles at this level.
Well, that'll be your special title within our group. So
Sounds good.
It's going to make a heck of an email signature.
That's long enough already. Okay.
Thank you, Jeff. We really appreciate you, and we look forward to an update in the future.
Okay, guys. See you soon sometime. All right. Have a good week out there.
Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for all of you out there joining us today too. We so appreciate it. And go out there. It's Monday, so go sell the house the right way.
And we'll see you live next week in our Zoom chat room.
That's right.
Whoever wants to join us next week. So we'll have a special guest. We'll let you know later. Have to reconfirm.
Oh,
A different special guest.
I was going to say, I got to find out who the special guest is. I am. Okay.
So,
All right. Take care, everybody.
bye, everyone.